Look at those highs back down near 80 degrees in Boston, but between now and then it's hot.
Can I say refreshing? That's actually not bad at all, right? So Boston, we take a look right now. Temperature, I mean, it's hazy out, right? But 98 degrees for us yesterday. What's in store for us now? Let's bring in meteorologist Mike Seidel. He is live for us in Boston. Mike, it seems like it's interesting what Boston's summer has been like, right? June, by all means, was really chilly, right? It was cool, but then we're making up for lost time now.
Yeah, June was right at average, and then in July it was the third warmest July on record, and it's been hot in August. 98 yesterday, second hottest day so far this summer. Today we won't be quite as hot. We do expect some storms, but just look at Boston Common. It is brown. There's a few green weeds out there, but it's been so dry, less than 2 inches of rain since June 1st, and this has affected the rivers. Let's get the lowdown on what's going on in Massachusetts with this drought. This is Julia Blatt, the executive director with the Massachusetts River Alliance, and thanks for coming out on this hot, steamy Boston day. Another drought, and you're getting kind of used to these droughts here in southeast Mass.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the third drought since 2016. We had a very severe 2 years long drought in 2016, and then again in 2020 we had another drought, and now here we are in 2022 with yet another drought.
Yep. Yeah, we'll put up the drought monitor showing the Northeast, and you go from New York City across here, Portland, Maine, a lot of these areas in a severe drought. Boston's only had about 65% of the rainfall to date. How has this affected the tributaries in Massachusetts?
Many of them are going dry. So when you have, the way rivers go dry, they don't suddenly have water and then there's no water. They go from having some water to being puddles that are disconnected. So it's not great if you want to go canoeing, and it's also not great if you happen to be a fish. So
yeah, we've seen that out on the Charles River in the upper reaches of the river where it's down to like a marsh. It should be 6 feet deep.
Yes, and I know there's at least one tributary in Wellesley that's completely dry right now, and I'm sure, and that was about a week ago, so we haven't had any rain in that week, and it's been hot, so I'm sure there are many more on the Charles by now.
And we're looking ahead to the next 5 days. It's spotty at best, so really no relief coming in. What do you really need to get these rivers recharged?
Well, especially in these urban areas, one big storm doesn't really do a lot because that water tends to run off very quickly into the rivers and out to the ocean. So what we really need is steady, consistent rain over a bunch of days, which may not be what most people want in the summer, but the rivers really need it. Yeah,
and you just look around here, it's so parched, so dry, and so hot. We want to thank you for joining us, Julia Blatt with the River Alliance here in Massachusetts. Pretty grim right now. We talk about the West, but here in the Northeast and New England, especially near the coast, it is exceptionally dry. We will get some storms this afternoon. More on that forecast through the afternoon live from Boston Common.
Record-setting temperatures for us yesterday in quite a few places. Boston, 98 degrees yesterday, although not our warmest temperature of the summer. We actually hit 100 back in July one day. Today's high expected to be a toasty one at about 91 degrees. So how are they handling the heat here in Boston? Let's bring in meteorologist Mike Seidel. Mike, I mean, one of those temperatures, you're like, okay, 91 right now, manageable. If it gets much warmer than this, though, then it becomes uncomfortable.
Well, it's already uncomfortable. We've got heat indices up in the mid-90s. Won't be quite as hot today. We may have some thunderstorms, and boy, do we need the rain. Take a look at the drought monitor. I know we focus a lot on the Southwest and California, but it is pretty dry here. Not as dire as the West, because we know we will get some rain. We'll have the summer thunderstorms, and then we'll have hopefully a nice winter with nor'easters and snowstorms. But in the short term, it's very dry. Most of Massachusetts in a moderate to severe drought. In fact, the entire state, the eastern half, in a severe drought. And we talked to Mollie Lopez earlier out at Millennium Park, and she talked about the water. That's the Charles River behind her. Take a look and listen to what she had to say.
You would normally see people paddle boarding and kayaking and canoeing. This is the canoe launch right here on the steps behind you, and people come every day with their kids. I haven't seen anyone in weeks. The water, not only is it shallow, it just doesn't look as clean. It sort of looks murkier. I don't know if it's saline because it feeds into the ocean, so I'm not sure about that. But no, you could never canoe right now. You could you'd hit the bottom. I mean, the water right now is just a couple feet deep, not even.
Yeah, typically that water there is about 5-6 feet deep, but now they can't even really get the kayaks out there at that part of the river. Now this is farther in from where it hits the Boston Harbor, where there's still plenty of water, but still it's down, well down on the banks. Take a look at the rainfall in July and how it ranked. Boston, fourth driest July on record with only 2/3 of an inch. And look at Newark, driest on record with just over 1/2 inch. And we will get some thunderstorms this afternoon. Radar right now, not very active, but it will light up. It will hopefully get some spotty rain. It's not going to do a whole lot, but we'll take what we can get. It will also knock the temperatures back, so we have a chance of some rain today and also Saturday afternoon and evening. We'll keep you updated here from Boston Common on a hot, dry day once again.
There's a live look at Boston. Hazy skies for us right now. Temperatures are in the 90s. It's going to be another scorcher for us in New England today. So let's get right to meteorologist Mike Seidel. He's in Beantown for us. Mike, you've been talking a lot about the heat. We know that's been an issue for us here the last few days, but maybe a lot of people don't realize just how dry it's there in Boston either.
Exceptionally dry in the Northeast, especially within, say, 2 hours of the coast. We talk a lot about the Southwest and, Lake Mead and California agriculture, but it's very dry here, and we can show you that we are getting a little bit of relief, brief relief. Some spotty storms have popped up. Look at that one around Nashville with some lightning and thunder. These are all moving east in a small cell out near Barry. That's in Worcester County, north and west of Worcester. So we're going to see some pop-up storms this afternoon. It'll drop the temperature quickly and give you at least some rain. 91 right now at Logan, heat index of 95. Speaking of dry, look at Boston Common. It's just parched, and we've got Ryan Woods, who's the Boston Parks Commissioner, who's joining us, and you're over this park and hundreds of other parks. What can you tell us about the drought and how it's affecting these common areas?
Yeah, what used to be a sea of green, fluffy grass is now burnt yellow, brown, crunchy grass. We're not seeing as much activity in the parks, as much people. This would be filled with people playing frisbee and sports. You're not seeing them out here in the heat. Our trees are taking lots of stress on. You're seeing a lot of dieback on our trees. And we're just encouraging people, if they can, to help water their trees. Water trees in front of their homes. Help with 20 gallons of water a week will make a big difference.
And what happens to this big lawn here? Because I know from my lawn and working in lawns, fescue has to be overseeded in the fall. Now, what will you do with this, assuming we get a decent amount of rain in September and October? Will you overseed this or just see what comes back up next spring?
We're working on a project to overseed, do a lot of slicing out here, and with our new master plan that's coming up, looking at permanent renovations that are going to happen out here for potential irrigation and stuff to add to America's first park.
And you talk about the dieback of new plantings and folks putting water on them. Are they helping out, most of them?
It is helping out. I mean, this shade is crucial for everyone, especially in front of people's homes. So it's something as minor as adding 20 gallons a week is not a big lift, and we're asking residents to help by just watering the trees in front of their abutting residences.
And you talked about the new skyscraper over there to the left of the crane, and you told me that they had to pay a lot of money because they're throwing shade on the common. Give us a little background on that. I found that very interesting.
Sure. From the sale of the Winthrop Square Garage, a city asset, we now have this new luxurious condo building that is adding shade to the common. With that, it gave some money to have behind our master plan. So now we have $28 million in capital funds. So as we implement our master plan throughout phases, there's for the first time money behind that plan. It won't just sit on a shelf for 20 or 30 years. We actually have action items that we can undertake with this funding.
Yeah, and I've seen other cities that over time they reimagine their parks and they go in and reconstruct and replant, and it just turns out beautifully. Well, I'm hoping that we get some rain.
Me too. We certainly need it.
Okay, Ryan Woods, who's the Parks Commissioner here in Boston. Mike Bettis, all I can say is I'm sweating like a New York waitress. It's warm again out here today. Not going to set a record, but it is very humid. Our dew point today is about 6 degrees higher. So our heat index is about where it was yesterday, although our temperature is 91. Yesterday we hit 98. And we will have the chance of storms as we showed you today and again tomorrow. But Sunday will tie the record stretch of consecutive 80-degree days at 24. It's not a factoid we talk a lot about. We usually do 90-degree days, but we are pretty far north. The average high right now here in Boston is 82. So we will break that probably on Monday because it's still going to be into the 80s on Monday.
Never heard that phrase before, like a New York waitress. Are we going to have to start tipping you now or what?
No, for parties or one or more, the gratuity is automatically added, so you don't even think about it. We'll put the 20% on before you go out the door.
Mike Seidel. Thank you. Appreciate it, Mike. Thanks. Stay cool. Now we talk about the other side of the coin here. With really hot temperatures and really dry conditions across the Northeast. A place like Boston yesterday, 98 degrees, one of our hottest days of the summer so far. We hit 100 back in July. Today's high expected to be at 91. We've been there the last couple of hours. Let's head straight to meteorologist Mike Seidel joining us from Boston. Mike, Northeast typically not a place we think a lot about when it comes to drought, but they've definitely been suffering through that this summer.
They have here in Boston about 2 inches of rain since June 1st. They've only had 65% year to date, but we do have some very isolated relief right now on the local radar. We've got a pretty decent cell, could produce some pea-sized hail and 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts coming out of New Hampshire through Nashua, coming down towards Lowell and towards 93. So look out there if you're going 93 northbound up towards Methuen. And another storm has just popped up just the past half an hour. This was heading towards 128.95 near Waltham. So quick hitters, it'll drop the temperature for a while, and it will give you some short-term relief. But when it rains this hard on a ground like this, which is basically hard as a rock, Boston Common here, it's just this big brown field because it's been so hot and dry so far this summer. It's also affected the tributaries across Massachusetts. We talked to Mollie Lopez earlier about the Charles River and the entire area here in Boston with this drought.
Yes, absolutely. This is the Charles River. So, I mean, it feeds all the way into Boston, and it's a huge ecosystem. There's all sorts of birds. There's beaver, snake, fish, fox, rabbits. It is a very healthy ecosystem, but this is the lowest I've ever seen the water, for sure.
Typically, that water there where she's standing at Millennium Park is about 6 feet deep. So we need the rain desperately. Storm chances this afternoon, this evening, and again tomorrow. The temperature is still above 90 through the weekend here in Boston and Southeast Mass.
There is a live look at Boston for you right now. Hazy skies overhead. Temperatures have climbed into the 90s. This after a 98-degree day yesterday. So let's get right to Boston and show you what's going on. Mike Seidel is there. Mike, we showed that forecast with Dr. Nab there. Next 4 days in the 90s, so there's not really a break coming.
No, not really. Not until the middle of next week we get that cold front down, and by next Wednesday or Thursday we'll be back around average, 80 to 82, and lower humidity. But right now I want to go to the radar because we've got some good news, at least for some of you, because this will cool you off briefly and bring you some much needed rainfall. Most of the action is north and west of Boston, going up 93. We had this storm with a warning coming out of New Hampshire. It's coming right across Bristol, Essex into Bristol County. It's going to head out toward Gloucester, crossing 93, and then now heading towards I-95. So look out around Andover, Lawrence, and eventually over towards the coast. Had another cell west of us in downtown Boston out near Waltham. That is croaked, and more storms developing again north and west of the city. So some of us will get rain. The chance of rain today is about 40 to 50%, so that gives you the kind of the statistical odds of you getting rain and how much rain we get. And we need the rain. Boy, the Charles River, when you get back upriver, some of it is dry as a bone. And earlier today we talked to Julia Blatt. She's the executive director of the Massachusetts Rivers Association, and her concerns as we get into our third drought since 2016 here in Southeast Massachusetts.
Certainly to us, rivers really matter, but of course all water is connected. So when you start to run out of water in your rivers, you do worry about water supplies. And that was in the 2016 drought. 6 towns declared water supply emergencies in Massachusetts, and I don't think we've had any yet this summer, but we're still just at the beginning of August, so we'll see how that goes. But certainly, you know, obviously the big picture is climate change.
Yeah, exactly. We talk so much about the drought in the west and southwest, but sometimes you forget back east we can get droughts too, even though we have the propensity for getting more rain and snow than they do out west. We'll see how the fall and winter takes place here in southern New England, but look at the drought monitor right now. The entire state of Massachusetts, either in a moderate or severe drought. The eastern half of the state, it's a severe drought. Logan Airport's down over 9 inches of rain. They've only had about 2 inches since June 1st. Last month was the third hottest July on record. So look at Boston Common. Usually it's a sea of green. Now it's just basically brown, and there's a lot of dirt, and it just not very aesthetically pleasing. But that's what happens when you have this kind of weather and a lot of foot traffic here in the garden. So, Mike, a little rain the next couple of days, but certainly a long way from really putting a dent in the drought. We need a dying tropical system or a nor'easter, and nor'easters don't really impact here until we get typically into September, late September or October.
I do. Just looking at your background there, though, Mike, I see the building cumulus behind you, so there's, relief hopefully on the way.
Well, at least it's giving us some shade. And, it's all about in the summer getting out of the direct sun. So the shade is helpful. The actual temperature is 90, and that's what we take the temperature in the shade. 90, heat index is about 94. So not as hot on the thermometer. Yesterday it was 98, but the heat index is just a couple degrees cooler because it's more humid today, and that humidity is helping to fire those storms primarily north and west of Boston. So we'll see how much rain we get, but again, it's just a dent over the next several days, and by middle of the next week we'll be back to some more typical mid-August weather here in New England.
Looking forward to it. Not the hot lobster roll then now. You're going to get the cold lobster roll and then the cold beer that goes along with it. We come back, more on that lightning strike outside of the White House last night, including important information you need to know if lightning threatens where you are. Then there's the heat across the Northeast. Doesn't seem like we're going to escape. It's going to last right through the weekend. Yesterday, our second warmest day of the year in Boston at 98 degrees. Today, low 90s for us. So let's get right to meteorologist Mike Seidel. He's been spending the afternoon at Boston Common here. Mike, I was going to say, okay, Red Sox are away. That's a pretty good thing. They can avoid the heat, but they're in Kansas City where it's even hotter than Boston.
Yeah, but they've got the big concert in town with Poison and Def Leppard and Joan Jett. So I talked to some folks going to that, and I told them, watch out for those thunderstorms. In fact, right now we've got a severe thunderstorm warning for parts of Middlesex County. You can see that clearly on the radar, and that's heading, it's near Chelmsford, and that's heading east at about 15 miles an hour. Could produce 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts and hail. So this is all heading in towards the Boston area. The brunt of it should go into the city, but on the north side of the city, another storm is up 93, and again, heavy rain, at least for the short-term relief from the heat, and also put some water in some of these rivers like the Charles River. Earlier we talked to Julia Blatt from the Massachusetts Association of Rivers and asked her about the situation with this drought, the third one since 2016.
We are seeing stream flows low all over the state. All the way from the western part of the state to the north, to the south, and of course here in the east. And we are seeing historic low flows in many of the rivers, including the Neponset River, the Nashua River in the middle of the state, the Neponset in the east. The Greenfield is also low in the west, and the Neponset and the Nashua, they've been keeping records for more than 80 years. And these are the lowest flows they've seen in these locations at this time of year, ever. And a concern is that just 2 years ago, we had very low flows with the drought, and 4 years before that, we had a very severe drought. So not only are we seeing severe droughts, but they're coming more quickly. They're more frequent now.
We need to recharge these rivers. Again, some storms today and again tomorrow here at Boston.